at home, I was trying to manage 7 and soon to be 8 people's lives in my head, including the household and the food and all the appointments for all the various different things and the activities and the emotional health of the children and making sure we had enough family time and my own health and all of these things. And I was trying just to do that on the top of my head and off the top of my head and keep all those plates in the air. And so I thought, okay, before I take an extreme step like delete the blog, what if I applied the same type of logic I use in business to my home life? Because in business, I thought of everything as a math equation and I solved for the variables of like, how can I help the most people? Well, so I thought, what if at home I solve for the variable of reduced stress? What would my life look like then? How could I 80-20 things so that I was still accomplishing the things I needed to accomplish without the stress and the variable being solving to get rid of that overwhelm?
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. Let's face it, there is so much that we juggle these days between work, engaging and educating our children, and playing referee from time to time, not to mention feeding them nourishing food, which at times can seem way beyond our reach. For most of us, we call the day a success if we had the chance to just shower or even get 5 minutes to ourselves. But what if we want to raise the bar just a little bit with our families? This is episode 251, and our guest today is Katie Wells. Katie is a mother of 6 who also happens to be the CEO of Wellnesse Mama and Wellnesse, a line of natural personal care products, and a podcaster. Today, Katie opens up about her system for finding work-life balance in her home. She also discusses how she manages her family's screen time and feeding them real nutrient-dense meals. She talks about a number of things, including how to embrace positive body image and instill in the children a sense of responsibility and self-ownership. Before we get into it, a quick word. Please join us at our Wise Traditions Conference in Atlanta this November, the 13th to 16th. The list of stellar speakers includes Dr. Tom Cowan, Sally Fallon-Morell, Del Bigtree, Stephanie Senoff, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The theme is Staying Healthy in a Toxic World. Personally, I can't wait for this event. So go to wisetraditions.org and sign up today to take advantage of early bird pricing. I will see you there. Oh, and a reminder that we have online groups to support parents. If you are looking for support on how to nourish your children and yourself, join the Nourished Children 2.0 and Nourished 2.0 groups on Facebook for one donation of only $5 for the calendar year. Nourishing our children is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is high time that we talk to a mother who is juggling so much and trying to live a healthy lifestyle. And I want you to speak to those moms right now and talk to us about how just a few years ago, you said you were near a nervous breakdown. Tell us that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've always thought that there's a lot of pressure, especially on women and moms in today's world with all that we balance, because so many things have been added to our plate, which is wonderful, but nothing was taken off the plate. So we just end up with all these things that we're still juggling. And about, probably close to 5 years ago now, I was running the blog and I had, at that point, 5 kids and I think close to the 6th one being on the way. And I was so stressed all the time and so overwhelmed. And I got to a point where I considered actually deleting Wellnesse Mama and realized I couldn't do everything the way I was doing it anymore. And obviously my family had to come first and I wasn't going to let them suffer or get the short end of the stick. So the only logical answer seemed to be that I should stop the business side. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I had this kind of like tiny glimpse of clarity where I realized in the business side, everything is pretty much stress-free and it runs and it's easy. And I really actually enjoy that part. So why is it that at home, I'm so stressed all the time. I'm so overwhelmed. And it just seems like I'm failing on all fronts and I can never stay on top of everything. And in that second, I realized it's because in business, I was managing everything intentionally and like a business. I had systems and objectives and KPIs and I knew where we were going and I knew what the goals were. And so it was easy to reach those things because there was a plan. Whereas at home, I was trying to manage 7 and soon to be 8 people's lives in my head, including the household and the food and all the appointments for all the various different things and the activities and the emotional health of the children and making sure we had enough family time and my own health and all of these things. And I was trying just to do that on the top of my head and off the top of my head and keep all those plates in the air. And so I thought, okay, before I take an extreme step like delete the blog, what if I applied the same type of logic I use in business to my home life? Because in business, I had always I thought of everything as a math equation. And I solved for the variables of like, how can I help the most people? How can I make this post the simplest, most concise action step possible? And I thought of everything like a math variable. So I thought, what if at home I solve for the variable of reduced stress? What would my life look like then? How could I 80-20 things so that I was still accomplishing the things I needed to accomplish without the stress, and the variable being solving to get rid of that overwhelm? So that's what I started doing, and putting kind of systems in place in my home life and with my family, just like I would in a business, and getting my family members involved, just like I would get team members involved in a business. And over the next few months, it completely revolutionized our family life, and the stress melted away, and I was able to keep doing all the things I loved in the business and still have, and I would say even better relationships and better family time, because there was that same level of intentionality and goal setting and measuring what was expected and getting everybody involved.
It sounds so great. And I have to ask you for a specific, because I want a window into what this looked like as you kind of put on your business hat almost at home to manage things differently.
Yeah. So I realized, for instance, in business, I was really big on hiring people who were extremely good at what they did and then letting them have autonomy and independence and respecting their brilliance and what they did. Whereas at home, I still had this mentality that nobody could do it quite as well as I could. So I was just going to do everything all the time, and I was going to handle everything. And I realized that my husband and I had worked really hard to teach our children a lot of things over the years. And we had created these pretty exceptional kids who were capable of a lot more than I was letting them do at that moment. And so kind of taking a big step back and looking at all the things that needed to happen in our household, almost as if it was a business responsibility list, and getting everybody involved as if we were a team, and letting people pull from their strengths. And then once we figured out the system, letting them own it. Because I think we as moms can fall into the cycle of we still carry the emotional responsibility of whatever the task is. And so then we're always reminding. So we might trade having to actually do the task, like unload the dishwasher, for having to remind someone 25 times to unload the dishwasher. And we actually end up spending more time. So I figured out all the things that my kids could be involved with that they were capable of, and then worked on switching the emotional responsibility to them and letting them have ownership for it so they could actually feel like they were really contributing to the family, because they really were. And I made a non-negotiable rule at that point that I was going to stop doing anything for them that they were capable of doing on their own, with the goal of trying to raise adults, not perpetual children. These were things they needed to do when they were adults anyway. And so I was going to stop doing things they were capable of doing, which meant that at the time, my then 4-year-old was capable of doing her laundry if she had a stool and she could reach it. And so she started doing her laundry. And my older one was able at 9 to cook dinner, and he did. And so just getting them and they loved actually being able to have that responsibility and that ownership, and to feel like they had done something on their own. And so it took a little while to refine the system and give everybody kind of their marching orders. But now that we have it, it's kind of a well-oiled machine. And the beauty of it is, with all the systems in place and actually written down, when I have to travel now for work, someone else can easily step in and fill in my part of the system because it's clearly defined.
That's so cool. And I'm thinking on some level, as a mom, we have to let go of perfectionism, because when the 4-year-old does the laundry, they might toss in the whites and the dark colors. And I mean, actually, I never mind doing that. But, we have to let go of having them do it the way we want them to do it, and seeing that they're doing it to the best of their ability. Isn't that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So now I want to ask you, how can we prioritize healthy living in the middle of that? Is that a part of your system, Katie?
Absolutely. So when I started putting these systems in writing, there were kind of like silos for different things. So there were ones, the most important being, of course, things related to our time as a family and our culture, our community, the things that we wanted to pass on to our kids before they left home. But since being healthy and trying to live to the best of our ability is so much part of our family culture, living healthy in a physical sense was very much high up on that list as well. So I did things like, I've always meal planned, but I realized I was still spending a lot of time on the act of meal planning and spinning my wheels. So I created 4 seasonal meal plans in 3-month increments that were based on seasonal produce, especially at the time, and that I ran through and made sure that all the macros were good. We were getting enough protein. There was enough micronutrients from all the different inputs. And then, so each of those 3-month meal plans, there were 14 separate dinners. Our lunches and breakfasts are pretty standardized anyway, but those 14 family dinners And then I split those into 2 weeks. So there were 7 and 7. And I pre-created shopping lists to go with each of those. So we weren't eating any meal more than once every 2 weeks. I already knew what my shopping list was once a week when I went, and it alternated. So each 3-month period, it would alternate back and forth each of those weeks. And so then I could also, if someone else, like if my mom was going to the store, she could help with shopping if she wanted to, or even the kids could help me with shopping because the list was the same and we could split it up easily. And then because the meals were the same, I could teach the kids how to cook them. And then they learned and developed actually getting really good at some of these meals, and they were able to help more. So now I just have those 4 seasonal rotating meal plans that we will sometimes switch out meals if we find new recipes we like. But in general, when we were especially in the transition, it was just not having to think about it and just repeat. Because I really believe, especially for women, we're so capable of multitasking, which is wonderful, but it can also be a downfall because we're so good at it. And so it was reducing that mental energy of all the things that I knew I had to do. So when I could pre-plan and take that off my list mentally, then it wasn't contributing to the overwhelm. And when I knew when the laundry was going to happen, I didn't worry about it when it wasn't going to happen. So it wasn't contributing to the overwhelm. And when I knew like exactly what day on my calendar we needed to order the seeds for gardening, I didn't have to think about it until then. So nothing was falling through the cracks. And I think that's the part that really gets to us, is when we feel like we're forgetting things or things are falling through because of it.
Absolutely. And I have to pivot for just a second and ask you about your background. Did you study math? Because I don't have a mind like yours. And I'm really curious, if you were always so kind of left brain oriented, or is it right brain? See, I always get the brain sides mixed up too.
It's funny. Other than just normal high school classes, I did read a calculus textbook and take the calculus AP test. Like math has always made sense to me, and I've always loved it, but I didn't actually take an extreme amount of math. I actually have always been really creative. I loved art and actually competed in art when I was younger and loved the creative stuff too. But math has just always made sense to me. And I always kind of like systematized everything as I kind of saw it in life and thought of things as equations like that.
That's so cool. Did you ever read the book Cheaper by the Dozen?
I haven't, but I think they turned it into a movie, didn't they?
They did, like back in the 50s or something. I don't know. It's like some black and white movie with Lucille Ball. But the reason it's coming to mind is because the father had a mind like yours. And he would be like, okay, he would time if it was quicker to button from the bottom up a shirt, or if it was better to button it from the top down. Like he was very precise, and it worked for their huge family. And so I like this idea of systems, even if we're not into being as precise as the guy in the movie or in the book. Like it's good for us to come up with stuff so that we avoid the overwhelm, as you've been saying.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to ask you, going back to the meal thing, what is a favorite food of yours or your family's right now?
I don't in general eat breakfast typically. I don't eat till lunch. So our kind of favorite food is the kids will get up and make their own breakfast usually. And that sometimes is smoothies. It's sometimes soups. We do a lot of breakfast soups, or they'll sometimes do leftovers from the night before or scramble leftovers into eggs to make omelets. For lunches, we typically do some kind of either big salads or cooked veggies or soups. So it's a lot of repeat there. My favorite lunch is a huge watercress salad with broccoli sprouts and a can of sardines and avocado and a bunch of like different herbs or whatever I'm kind of feeling that day. And then olive oil. And I just make a huge salad with all the healthy fats and lots of green stuff. And then I'm a huge fan of sardines. And then for dinner, they love, the kids call it egg roll guts, which is like a stir fry made of vegetables and the meat that you would put inside of an egg roll, but just no wrapper. That's one of their favorites. That's kind of a go-to on the rotating meal plan.
Now, are some of these recipes on your website? Can we check them out there?
They are. Yeah. We have hundreds of recipes on the website. And then also there's a system called Real Plans that all my recipes are loaded into, and people can use that to actually plan the meals too.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I love that you guys don't just have cereal for breakfast. I mean, people who listen to our show, Katie, are all across the board in different places on their wellness journey. And so I just want to put in a plug here that dinner for breakfast is like awesome. Like why do we make the heaviest meal the one at the end of the day? Like why not start your day with some nice, protein and fats and like really fuel yourself to go. And again, I like that you skip breakfast. Like everyone has to do what works for them too. But I'm just saying like there's no need to fit into the standard box that is promoted out there, right?
Exactly.
Your life just sounds wonderful and full for sure. But tell us, do you have one area of weakness or some place where you feel like, oh my gosh, I still don't have it together? Because that would make us all feel better, I think.
Well, I have to always say it because anybody who's online or public facing at all, I think it's like the myth of social media too, is, none of us post our bad days, or typically not, or we'll only post a glimpse of the hard stuff. So I never want to be ever for anyone that thing of like, oh my gosh, how does she get it all done? Because that's absolutely not what it is. I have bad days just as much as anyone else. And my answer is I don't do anything all the time. Like I do a lot of things and get it all done, but I can't get everything done every day. And that's actually one of my philosophies with life as well, is I try not to do anything every single day, including take supplements. I always take the weekends off from supplements. I don't drink coffee every day because I don't want to get used to the caffeine. I don't do the same exercises every day. I think the body thrives on adaptability, so I don't get it all done every day. But this is actually something I've been trying to sort of break the mindset around, because when I was younger and I got really sick, I had Hashimoto's that's now in remission, but I had to be really strict for a while in order to get better. And that was a time of my life that was what was necessary. But because of that, I kind of got in that mentality of like, this equals bad, or certain foods are bad, or doing certain things it's bad. And so in the last year or so, I've been trying to consciously undo that mindset and get more intuitive about listening to my body and how I eat and live versus thinking of anything as objectively good or bad. Because I think anything, it's how your body handles it, it's the situation, it's the amount, it's the interval, how often are you eating it. And so I don't think I've admitted this publicly yet, but I sometimes eat gluten or sugar like maybe once a month, and I'm just fine because I've healed my gut and I've dealt with all the health issues and it doesn't actually affect me. I still don't eat those things often because I don't think they're nutrient dense, but I had to learn to actually have a little bit more balance and not be quite so strict about everything. And the irony is I've been able to continue to be healthy and actually lose weight by doing that. I think it goes back to metabolic flexibility and having a good relationship with food and with health. So I say I stay on track 95% of the time, but I try to 100% enjoy, every day and every instant. So I 100% enjoy when I'm eating super, super clean. And I also 100% enjoy those couple times when I just eat something because it tastes good and it doesn't necessarily have the nutrients that I would normally eat, but I'm not going to feel guilty about it either.
Coming up, Katie addresses the biggest hurdle facing parents today in her estimation, and she gives advice to those of us who feel we are way too busy.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Mountain Rose Herbs. Mountain Rose Herbs is an online purveyor of the highest quality, organically grown herbs and spices, teas, essential oils, and botanical goods. Their focus is on sustainability. Their passion for organics is woven into every fiber and thread of Mountain Rose Herbs operations. They offer high-quality, organically grown herbs, spices, teas, essential oils, and botanical goods. In 1987, Mountain Rose Herbs made it their mission to provide plant lovers with exceptional, organic botanicals harvested with the utmost respect for the places they grow and the people who grow them. Since then, Mountain Rose Herbs has never ceased reimagining what good business can accomplish or working to turn their dreams into reality. Learn more about Mountain Rose Herbs at mountainroseherbs.com. And please note this, they were the first company in Oregon to earn a zero waste certification at its highest ranking, Platinum, diverting 97.6% of their waste in 2017. Their focus on quality and variety is unparalleled. So go to mountainroseherbs.com and use the discount code WAPF10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And Just Thrive. Imagine a probiotic that actually does what it is supposed to do. One that survives digestion 100% so it can get to work in your gut. Just Thrive is the first and only 100% spore-based, DNA-verified and tested probiotic supplement. As the subject of groundbreaking clinical studies, Just Thrive has demonstrated incomparable effects on the gut and its undeniable connection to the immune system and brain. Just Thrive strains are clinically proven for leaky gut with 10 additional ongoing human clinical trials. Just Thrive supplies powerful immune system support and also benefits your brain and heart. Just Thrive produces carotenoids and antioxidants such as alpha and beta-carotene, lycopene, and lutein. It's a powerful probiotic plus the most bioavailable form of antioxidants in one. So say goodbye to bloating, gas, leaky gut, and brain fog, and hello to being regular and clear-headed. It's vegan, non-GMO, soy-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, salt-free, nut-free, and gluten-free. You just take one capsule of Just Thrive probiotic daily. You can even open the capsule and sprinkle it on food or in drinks or bake with it up to 455 degrees. These are the toughest, most effective probiotics you'll ever find. Just Thrive is offering listeners 15% off site-wide. So go to justthrivehealth.com today and enter the code WISE to learn more and take advantage of this incredible savings opportunity. Again, that is justthrivehealth.com and enter the code WISE to get 15% off your entire order. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. That sounds a lot like intuitive eating.
Yeah, exactly. I've tried to really develop that. And for me, it's gone hand in hand with a lot of inner work and working through some past trauma and getting just more in touch with my body in general. And the flip side of that is like I can eat things that I would not normally not have eaten before and not feel bad, but I only want to eat small amounts of them. But as I've gotten more in touch with my body as well, I'm so in tune with when I'm full that if I could not eat more, like once I'm full, my body just will not accept any more food. And so I'm able to listen to it really easily.
I bet it's really good for the children to see you making these choices as well. I mean, it's probably healthy for them also to learn to listen to their own bodies, and they see you modeling that.
Exactly.
So you talked about kind of getting more in touch with childhood trauma that you've had and kind of being in a different place than you were before. Are there certain areas too where you're helping your children work through like this intuitive eating philosophy, or how do you see them living their healthiest lives?
It's a great question. I think in some ways I've learned it from my children because since we've always just had clean food at home, I've tried to never pass on any kind of neurosis around food to them. So it wasn't that I told them like, you can never eat sugar, you can never eat gluten, you can never eat these foods. I just didn't have them in the house because I tried to make that our family culture, is that we love nutrient dense foods and brightly colored vegetables and bright foods and all that. And so from the beginning, to them, food is fuel. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch as kids because they're so active. They have learned to develop and crave the things their body needs. So they'll come back from some of their sports or from pole vaulting and they're craving protein or they're craving. And so they'll be like, Mom, can we make salmon and broccoli? And they know to crave the things that actually have the nutrients in them. And so I saw that in them. I'm like, they don't feel deprived when they're eating salmon and broccoli. They're not wishing they were eating something sweet that they can't have. And they view food as a fuel, and they view their body as like this amazing machine that can do things. They weren't sitting there looking at their body going, oh, I wish it looked different, or I wish this was smaller or whatever. And so I tried to actually like lean into that and learn the beauty of that from children, because they're just born with this amazing ability to listen to their bodies. But also last year, that was one of my biggest experiments for the year. I don't do resolutions, but I had set it as an experiment and a goal that I was going to get through those issues, my internal issues and my body image issues, because I did not want to pass those on to my children. I wanted them to keep that ability to think of food as a way to fuel and nourish the body and not as something that was bad or harmful. And I wanted them to think of their bodies as an incredible tool and machine that they could do fun, incredible things with. And so I sort of vowed last year, no matter what it takes, I'm going to figure out how to conquer this year, because I don't want my daughter, who was 11 at the time, to look in the mirror and think of the things that her body isn't, or to see her flaws. I want her to continue to see how incredible and grateful she is that she has a body that can jump over a pole that's 9 feet in the air, or whatever it may be. And so I really set out on a journey of that. And so I would say, if anything, I learned from them. But just reading, like I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
I've heard of that book.
Is so good. And I did things like tapping and just trying to like even take small steps. Like when I looked in the mirror in the morning, instead of that script that would tend to run in my head automatically of, oh gosh, my stomach is this because I had so many babies, or all the things I would see that I didn't like, I would try to find the things I could be grateful for and look at those and call those out instead. And slowly it made this shift that I realized one day that I looked in the mirror and I didn't just immediately think of the negative, which was one of my, like I said, one of my big goals for last year. But I'd say I should be grateful because I learned it from my kids.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And I know another thing you've learned from your kids, pole vaulting.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it true that you're trying your hand at it?
I am. So I never in a million years thought I would try pole vaulting. We live close by and have become friends with someone who trains Olympians, and we're just grateful we live close to him. And so the kids have all taken it up as a hobby. And my daughter especially has kind of a natural knack for it and has gotten really, really good. And they all started doing it. And I realized, like, one thing I always want to model for my kids is like learning from failure. And we have a family motto, you were made to do hard things. And I realized they just see me work all the time, but they don't really see me try something and not be good at it and then have to really work hard and overcome it, especially in a physical sense. So I started pole vaulting. So did my husband. They definitely get some of their athleticism from him because he's already well above 6 feet. But it does not come easy. It's one of the harder things I've ever done. But I love that they're getting to see me like fall over myself and not be great at it at first and still have fun with it.
Oh, and I love that philosophy. You were made to do hard things. It actually reminds me of parenting because it's not easy. It's not easy. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the biggest hurdle? No track and field pun intended, but what do you think is the biggest hurdle for parents these days in helping their family live a healthy lifestyle?
Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, certainly we were facing things that previous generations of parents haven't had to face with technology and with all kinds of stuff. I think maybe the unknown is the toughest thing because everything is changing so rapidly. At least for me, that's always top of mind, is how do I prepare my kids for a world that doesn't exist yet and that I can't even fully necessarily probably predict. that's one of the reasons we actually decided to homeschool, is realizing even the school system now, it was originally like started so long ago, and it prepared kids for a world that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. And so how can we help create kids that are going to change the world for the better and keep things moving? Like our kids talk about all the time, their generation has a lot of things to fix and a lot of problems to clean up. And so we kind of sat down and thought in that same vein when I was overwhelmed, is like, what are the things that are actually really important to us to pass on to our kids? And we realized it wasn't things like that you need to sit still for 8 hours and get every single answer right on the test, or that there's only one right answer to every problem. It's that we want them to be able to think critically, and we want them to stay creative and innovative and think outside the box. And I'm a big believer that the people that will succeed and keep changing the world going forward are those who can see patterns where there aren't normally patterns. So kind of back to the math equation. And so we were like, how can we make sure that we pass these things on to our kids and really foster that as part of our family culture, as part of our education culture? And so that's kind of what we've done in trying to pass that on to them.
I love that. I love that you're stimulating them on so many levels to think for themselves. I think that's a valuable asset. I've heard it said that in schools they educate, but they don't teach us to think and evaluate, so that's really, really important. Now, how do you manage screens in your household, Katie?
Good question. So just like the food thing, I never wanted them to become a forbidden thing that they would like feel like they had to hide or want to like sneak in when they weren't with us, or that became such a intrigue that when they left home, that's all they wanted to do. And so we've tried to manage teaching them good habits about screen time, but also not letting them have too much at too young of an age. And I think a large part of that is for us modeling it and not always being on screens ourselves. So they know my husband and I both work on computers, but we have work time, and it's typically while they're doing school, and so they see us work. But we try to have those off and be good examples when it's family time, and not just be constantly looking at our phones. Our oldest is 13, and he still does not have a phone of his own. So we have a house phone that stays when he babysits and that kind of stuff, but it's not his phone. And of course, we can check the browser history and we have full access to it. But we try to teach them, just like with food, technology is a tool, and it's one that their generation is certainly going to increasingly have to know how to navigate, but that just like any tool, it can be misused and it can be really harmful, just like food or just like even water if you misuse it. And so like mentoring them and guiding them and letting them develop those good habits young. And then of course they know things like the science of looking at blue light after dark is not good for your melatonin, especially when you're a child. So we don't let them do screens after dark for the most part, but also wanting them to be proficient in screens, because like I said, it is going to be a big part of their world. So teaching them coding in school and making sure they understand technology. We do have an agreement with them that they can't have their first phone and they can't drive until they've had a profitable business for a year. And this goes back to our idea of what do we want to pass on to them before they leave home, and realizing that teaching them through entrepreneurship, you can work in many of the lessons of life through that. So in running a business, you learn to be consistent, you learn to solve problems, you learn to show up, you learn customer service, you learn attention to detail, you learn critical thinking and creativity and connecting the dots. And so we work with them to create a business and then run it profitably. And then after they do that, then they can get a phone. So kind of multifaceted answer, I guess.
That's wonderful. And what businesses do you see blossoming in your household, out of curiosity?
Yeah, it's fun. So the little ones have, of course, like the small ones, like little neighborhood things where they sell things or like newspapers, that kind of thing. My older ones, my son is really into science. And so he's experimenting with a series of superworms actually that can, we think, break down plastic into safe byproducts without the BPA. And so he's working with some scientists on that. It's really fascinating. And then he's got a couple other just like local businesses that he's working on as well.
How fun. That's really exciting. We look forward to learning more about that. Well, we're going to wrap up soon, but I do want to ask you, what advice do you have for parents who feel too busy to take care of themselves, let alone help create like a healthy atmosphere in their home?
Yeah, well, I will say I've been there, as I mentioned in the beginning when we first started talking, and my heart goes out to people. I know how overwhelming parenting can be. I would say what it took for me for a while and what seems to help is to simplify as much as possible, at least in the beginning. We saw the Marie Kondo trend of doing this with our physical possessions and how much less stressed people can be when they declutter. But I think we also have to do that mentally and with our time more than anything, because our time is our most valuable asset. So if you're in that state of overwhelm, be kind of ruthless and look at what is absolutely not required, what's not necessary that can go away for a while, and start with scheduling the most important things first. So when I was in that place of overwhelm, I started with a completely blank calendar, like took everything off. And then I started by putting the most important things on first. So family dinner went first, and time with each of my kids went first. And the things that actually are going to matter and that I'm going to look back probably one day at the end of my life and be like, I wish I had more of those moments. Those things went first. And then everything else scheduled around that, the extra activities and the extra work stuff. Because I think as humans, we will fill whatever container we give ourselves. So if we give ourselves 8 hours to work, we're going to take 8 hours to work. If I put my family first and I give myself 3 hours to work, I'm going to get it done in 3 hours. But, and also getting everyone else involved. When I was in that place of overwhelm, it was because I was trying to either do or emotionally manage every aspect of life and realizing that, especially in a family, we are a team. So to start acting like a team and letting people actually take ownership of other parts of that. So it's not all falling on us. But beyond that, find a starting point where you can have as little stress as possible. No stress is not possible, of course, but find a place where you can start from where you're not so stressed. Get comfortable there, establish systems and good habits, and then build in baby steps slowly as you're able to without getting overwhelmed. That way it's sustainable and you're not trying to just overhaul your whole life overnight, but you're building a system that's going to work for you and your family over time.
That's really, really helpful. I love that. Simplifying, streamlining, and prioritizing the things that are most important. So I want to ask you a question I often pose at the end now. If the listener could do one thing, Katie, to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
I love this question. I would say one that I'll try to keep it free, easy, and has multi-benefits. I'm a big fan of stacking beneficial things into the same time period. And so one non-negotiable for me is every morning within an hour of waking up, and as soon as possible, pretty much of waking up, I try to spend half an hour outside, even if it's not a sunny day, but just outside. There's so much science about the broad spectrum of light that comes from the sun, even on a cloudy day, and how much more light that is than we could ever get inside. And when that light hits certain receptors in our eyes and on our skin, it signals all of this cascade of hormones that's beneficial for circadian rhythm, for proper melatonin production at night, for keeping cortisol in the right range. And it's totally free. And then I try to stack that. So I will often drink a cup of tea or coffee on the front porch with my kids or my husband, and then outside, or go for a walk. So that way you're getting community, you're getting movement, you're getting something warm to drink, and you're getting time with those you love. But that light in the morning, people often discount just how powerful light can be. It's a free, super simple, easy way that you can actually see some pretty dramatic improvements in health.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love it. And I actually have that habit as well. So I'm a big fan of it. I can't believe how good I feel and how wonderful it is. So thank you for that advice. And we will put a link in the show notes to your website, to the recipes. And I think you even started a self-care product line. Isn't that right? Wellnesse?
Yes. Our new line is called Wellnesse, and it's built on the premise that we shouldn't have to sacrifice finding products that really work as well as conventional alternatives to be able to use natural and safe products. So we have right now hair care and toothpaste, and we'll be having a lot more products come to market this year. But I'm really excited about those because they're all completely EWG verified as safe, natural, clean products that work as well as conventional alternatives.
Why am I not surprised that you can bring this to us? You are amazing. I'm so glad you didn't shut down the Wellness Mama business years ago and that you found a way to make it all work. And we look forward to talking to you next time, Katie. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our guest today was Katie Wells, the Wellness Mama. Visit her website at wellnessmama.com. And I'm Holistic Hilda. Go to my website, holistichilda.com. And for the show notes for this and every podcast episode, visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now for a letter from our journal. My firstborn daughter was very little. She was never quite right. She was pale and very lean. She had dark rings under her eyes. She would often cry for hours and have meltdowns daily, seemingly without cause. However, because she was reaching all her developmental milestones, the medical profession made me feel that I was a paranoid first-time mother. I thought we had a healthy diet. She was breastfed until 21 months, but the rest was low-fat, lots of fruit, rice crackers, sugary homemade sweets, gluten-free pasta, etc. As a veterinarian who had been indoctrinated by mainstream medical and pharmaceutical practices, I didn't think twice about the recommended childhood vaccination regime. However, after my daughter's 18-month vaccinations, her demeanor was worse, crying, irritable, and I was terrified that her language had regressed. A month after this vaccination, she had an acute systemic anaphylactic reaction to 1/4 of a cashew nut. Holding her blue, floppy body in my arms was the worst day of my life. Living with an anaphylactic child is living on the edge. This started us on an amazing journey of real food discovery and healing. Although it took almost 2 years to find WAPF, we have never looked back. Bone broths, ferments, organ meats, no processed foods, no sugar, raw dairy, grass-fed meat, pastured eggs, organics, real fat and lots of it, cod liver oil, etc. And needless to say, there were no more vaccinations. My daughter's disposition and health continued to improve over the years. Then in November last year, when she was 6, we did our final nut challenge without a reaction. No more EpiPens, action plans, or medical alerts. Thank you, Weston A. Price Foundation, for your continued dedication to finding the truth about food and commitment to our future generations. That's Rebecca from Brisbane, Australia. Rebecca, it is our pleasure. And if you feel so led, please write a letter to the editor for submission in an upcoming journal, or rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts, and we'll try to get it on the air as well. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. Stay well, and hasta pronto. And hasta pronto, by the way, means see you soon.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.